Chapter 1 Welcome. Hi there. Welcome to You're Hired Resume Tactics, Job Search Strategies That Work. Make no mistake. Searching for work is work. It takes time, effort, and a lot of self-motivation to succeed in your search. While you have your skills and experience in place to be able to apply and land your dream job, or one that leads you to it, searching for a job requires a whole different set of skills. It is often said, resumes are your ticket to job searching success. This book focuses on resume writing tactics to maximize your job searching effectiveness and is excerpted and expanded upon from my book You're Hired. Job Search Strategies That Work. Nobody can make a promise that if you follow their program, you will be guaranteed the results you are looking for, and I won't either. However, I'm confident that if you follow the strategies outlined in this book, your chances of succeeding in landing a job are increased. From my experience, one of the biggest problems job seekers often face is they feel they are coming from an inferior position and they don't have a lot of personal power. The belief being that the employer has the superior position and has all the power. Yes, they have the job and they have the power to give you the job, or not. What you may not realize is many hiring managers are under similar pressures as you, the job seeker. They have the pressure of finding the right candidate for the vacancy they need to fill. They are accountable to their superiors should the person they hire not work out. It has been said that an inappropriate hire can cost the organization an additional 30 to 50% over the job position's annual wage. This would include lost productivity incurred when the new hire is oriented, the cost of advertising for new applicants, and the time taken to interview and follow up with applicants. Hiring managers are under pressure to hire the right candidate. Your task is to become the only choice. The right choice. As I mentioned earlier, we are likely not experts at searching for jobs and landing one. It isn't something we do on a regular basis. As I researched the content for my book, You're Hired. Job Search Strategies That Work, I found that the problem is compounded by a lack of hard facts on what are the best practices for job searching. I'm reminded of an old parable about a group of blind men that were required to touch an elephant and to describe their observations. Each one felt a different part, but only one part, such as a tusk or the trunk. When they compared notes, they learned that they were in complete disagreement. I found the same to be true when researching strategic job searching skills. Each web page from my search results on the internet spoke from the perspective of the writer, whether they were a resume writer, an employer hiring manager, recruiter, etc. Much the same as the blind men describing what an elephant looks like, their advice is from their perspective. That makes sense to me. We all create our own reality. My reality is completely different from anyone else's. The problem is that the job search experts state their observations as hard facts. They believe what they write is true. And then the next article you read will dispute what the first expert had said, and they will present their truths. How can something be both true and false at the same time? You must never do this. You must always do this. Same advice. Can something be both yes and no? I don't consider myself an expert at job searching. What I am very good at, though, is taking subjects that people struggle with, finding better, easier ways to do things, and breaking it down to basic strategies that work. I create systems to solve problems. Years ago, I moved my family across Canada to a city where I didn't know anyone. I had a brand new home built for me, but I didn't have a job waiting for me when I got there. At the time, the new location was very hostile towards people that had moved from the east to the west coast. I often heard, "You Easterners come out here and steal our jobs." I found that jobs were limited. I found getting an interview for a position I had applied for was like winning a lottery. I also found that my new geographical area had what they called a sunshine tax. As a desirable place to live, the cost of living is higher, and employers believe that they can get away with paying their employees lower wages. The idea being that you, the worker, should be grateful to have a job, and that the employer can get away with paying you less. If you don't want the job, somebody else will. I got so tired of hearing about stealing local jobs that I started to change my story when I attended local business networking events. Instead of saying that I was unemployed, I would say that I had retired early. I was 39 years old, and the illusion that I had retired early seemed to resolve the "you Easterners" complaint. However, I used to add, if the right job came along, I would likely consider going back to work. It was offered somewhat tongue-in-cheek. It took me a good 6 months to land a job. It wasn't as good a job as I had hoped. It was a compromise until something better came along. I describe my employment experience at my new location as being like a roller coaster ride. I went from being unemployed to employed. I went from not getting enough hours to getting too many. I went from being employed to being laid off. I went from being employed to being self-employed. Self-employment ended when I came back from a vacation to find that my only client had sold their business, i.e. a vocational school, and the new owners had no idea who I was or had need of my services. Back to being unemployed. Then I got a job in another city. It was a 90-mile round trip daily. I went from being at the employer's beck and call for 3 years, working as many hours as I could as a casual staff. Then I got fired. Then I got unfired and a new job, same company, a few blocks away. I went from full-time to no time to part-time to even more part-time. Then less time and even less time. I had to tell my manager that I couldn't afford to stay, and I couldn't afford to go. We solved the problem by me picking up hours from another worker who wanted to work less. The downside is that I work a lot of night shifts, and it is still a 90-mile, 150-kilometer round trip for work. I think you can see why I call it a roller coaster ride. Over the years, I have been invited to numerous job search training programs as a guest speaker, promoting the value of public speaking skills and networking to the job search and interviewing process. Throughout this book, I will be providing you with what I consider to be best practices for creating and writing your resume. Some content may disagree with what the so-called experts would say, but then again, the next one would likely agree with me. If you are a sports fan, you will recognize that any sport has a set of rules and varying degrees of competition. Searching for a job, your job, is a competitive situation. It could come down to 2 or more possible candidates, hopefully you being one of them, having very similar credentials and qualifications. If there was ever a time that self-promotional skills and self-confidence would come into play, it would be in the job searching and interviewing process. Being able to effectively promote yourself can make the difference between landing the job and a "thank you very much, but we won't be hiring you at this time." Welcome aboard, and I hope you enjoy our journey together. Chapter 2: Resumes Overview. I would expect that if you were searching the internet for advice on how to create a resume, you would become awfully frustrated. I know that I certainly was. There is the old school way of creating one, and the so-called new ways to create a resume. The problem seems to be that nobody really seems to agree on what the new way is. Everybody has their own pearls of wisdom that has either worked for them or is based on their personal perspective of the job searching process. If you dig deep enough, you will notice patterns on the advice given. Each piece of sage advice to the positive seemingly has someone else who believes the opposite. Much of the resume writing advice is given in absolute positives: you must do this, you must never do this, or that is so outdated, here's how you do it now. Write for a robot resume reader, or don't write for a robot resume reader. That's so 2016. What I have tried to do is to create a system to help you create your resume yourself. I've highlighted techniques and tactics gathered from self-proclaimed experts on the internet, and have organized them in a manner that should make it easier for you to decide for yourself and create a winning resume. So what is the purpose of a resume? If you're fairly new to job searching, you might have been led to believe that a resume is the document that gets you hired. That's not precisely how it works. Your resume is indeed the document you use to apply for jobs, along with a customized cover letter where appropriate. However, the real function of your resume is to simply whet the employer's appetite and get them to want to call you for an interview. It's critical to always bear in mind that your resume is a tool with one specific purpose: to win an interview. Some people write a resume as if the purpose of the document was to land a job. As a result, they end up with a really long and boring piece that makes them look like desperate job hunters. The objective of your resume is to land an interview, and the interview will land you the job, hopefully. Your resume is not a place to brag, nor is it a place to be modest. Its sole purpose is to generate interest in you. What differentiates you from the competition? In addition to including all relevant information about your skills, background, accomplishments, etc., you should find ways to include details that could generate curiosity. If you are new to the job market, perhaps you are just out of school and haven't developed a repertoire of skills yet, you may find yourself looking for what is called an entry-level job. You may find yourself dropping your resume off at various businesses with the hope that they may have a vacancy, and your resume might entice them to call you. In this case, your resume becomes a leave behind. I'm reminded of a couple local young fellows who didn't quite understand the concept of leave behind. The two of them were on their way to drop off some resumes at local businesses in the hope of finding some work. For whatever reason, they decided to do a B&E, that is a break and enter of a home, on the way to pass out their resumes. Being very polite, when they broke into the house, they took their shoes off at the door, so they wouldn't make a mess. When they were finished with burglarizing the home, they went on their merry way, back to dropping off their resumes. There was one big problem though. In their haste to get away from the house, they had put their shoes on and closed the door, but one fellow inadvertently left his resume on the floor beside where his shoes had been. I can feel you wincing. Yes, this is one leave behind that you never want to do. I'm pretty sure he got an interview, but not quite the one he had hoped for. Who is going to read your resume? It depends on the job you are applying for and where it is located. For a larger company, there may be a hiring manager whose duty is to review resumes for specific job vacancies. A smaller organization may have a manager who finds themselves having to fill 2 or 3 vacancies a year. Then there are those managers that find themselves hiring for the first time. You also have recruiters who are paid on commission for every successful candidate that they place into a job vacancy. The hiring managers for large companies may use software, i.e. robots, to review incoming resumes, sorting them into yes for follow-up by human or no, straight to the wastepaper basket or trash in cyberspeak. You supposedly only have 5 to 6 seconds to impress or catch the eye of a hiring manager that may be tasked with reading several hundred resumes for a single job. But then again, they may only get a few resumes in each mail delivery. You need to create a resume that not only catches the attention of whoever receives them, but you want them to dig deeper and contact you for an interview. Your resume's purpose is to get you called for an interview, not to get you the job. In the next chapter, we will look at how grammar, spelling, and formatting can help you get invited for a job interview, or not. Chapter 3: Grammar and Spelling Formatting. It goes without saying, avoid spelling or grammatical errors, but I'll say it anyway, avoid spelling or grammatical errors. Yet, it may well be one of the biggest reasons that job seekers are not called for an interview. There are some recruiters who will discount your resume the second they see a spelling or grammatical error. Your eyes often see what you meant to type instead of what's really there. Although it can be painful, make sure you don't just read over your resume several times, but also that you have a friend take a peek too. You would be well off to locate a friend that has good grammatical skills, or you could pay someone to review your resume. It's easy to miss even big, embarrassing mistakes when you've been looking at your resume for too long. An objective reader can make a big difference in helping you catch spelling and grammar problems, as well as many of the other mistakes identified in this section. It is important to proofread carefully if you are applying for jobs that require writing skills and/or attention to detail. For a potential future boss, your resume is your first work sample and should reflect your ability to write, edit, and proofread if hired. Let's look at some specifics. Watch your tenses. Improper tense is another common error that can hurt you in the eyes of hiring managers. If you are still actively working in the role you are describing, use the present tense and use words such as manage, deliver, organize. If you are describing roles you have had in the past, use past tense verbs. Some examples are managed, delivered, organized. Avoid first-person pronouns. As a general practice, don't use words like I or me or my. So, instead of saying, I hit and exceeded company sales quotas 100% of the time, say, hit and exceeded sales quotas 100% of the time. Employers look at your profiles to see if they can find out more about your qualifications, to see if you are creative, and to see if you'll be a good fit with their team. They'll also be watching for red flags such as poor grammar and spelling, antisocial behavior, or anger issues. Consistency. Your resume must be error-free. That means no spelling errors, no typos. No grammar, syntax, or punctuation errors. In addition, there should be no errors of fact. Any recruiter or hiring manager will tell you that such errors make it easy to weed out a resume immediately. You should list your information in a consistent way. Let's take a closer look at formatting. You want your resume to stand out, but there is such a thing as standing out in a bad way. You may think it's creative to use 6 different fonts and colors, but that kind of creativity tends to just look clumsy. Avoid too many font types and steer clear of font sizes that are too big or too small. Big fonts make you look like you are shouting, and can also indicate that you don't have enough good content to fill a resume with normal-sized text. Small fonts may help you keep your resume to one page, but it's not worth it if the reader needs to squint. You should also avoid long paragraphs and long blocks of text. Most people scan resumes very quickly and often skip long paragraphs and miss key information. Use whitespace and bullets to make your resume format easy on the eye. Use of bullets can also ensure better reader comprehension when visually scanned. You should leave comfortable margins on the page and make sure that everything is aligned. Look neat. Look smart. Also, keep in mind that there's a good chance your resume will be scanned electronically, as more and more companies use special software to index resumes. If you're using wacky fonts, the software may not pick up important keywords in your resume. Save and send your resume as a PDF rather than a Word document, as it freezes it as an image so you can be sure hiring managers see the same formatting as you. If you send it any other way, there's a chance that the styling, format, font, and so on could look different on their computer than yours. Labeling your resume file correctly is important. Too many people save this important document with random or generic file names like sgks123.pdf or resume.pdf. Remember that recruiters will see the name of the file that you send them, and also remember that they get tons of resumes every day. Make it super clear whose resume they should click on by saving it under a logical name like first name _ last name _ resume.pdf. I also include the date I created the file as part of my file name. Doing so can be helpful if you have multiple versions saved of your resume. Even more important than naming the file in a logical manner is laying out your resume in an organized manner. How you lay it out depends on where you are in your career path and what you're looking to do next. While a chronological approach is the default format, it's not always the best way to make your case. I want to reinforce here that you need to be consistent with your formatting. For example, if you bold the name of the organization in one section, you need to do it everywhere. Yet at the same time, be sparing with your bolding. Your formatting should emphasize and reinforce the focus you chose, not distract from it. As an example of consistency, every job identified on your resume should list information in this order. Title. Name of employer. City and state or province, depending on where you live and the years you work there. Use boldface, underlining, and italics consistently. If you decide to bold one job title, all titles should be in boldface. If you underline one section heading, underline them all. In addition, you should be uniform in your use of capital letters, bullets, dashes, hyphens, etc. So, if there is a period after one set of job dates, there should be a period after all job dates. If one degree is in bold, all degrees should be in bold. Whatever you decide about such things stylistically, be consistent. It may seem obvious, but spelling and grammar are critical, even if you are in computer programming or sales. Spell check is not foolproof. Just because it's a word doesn't mean it's the word you want to use. A grammar error or misspelling can stand out like a sore thumb and tell the employer that you're careless. These mistakes are easily avoidable. In the next chapter, we look at how to feature your contact information. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Robert Schuller,